Welcome today, everybody. We're going to talk about stock splits. It's kind of an exotic name, like a stock split. That's good. It's bad. It really is going to. We're really going to show you that that's just a perception that we look at as as the public eye and say, oh, that's good or bad. In large part, nothing's really changed, but we're going to show why it's used, and we'll go into that. So let's start. So when we look at stock splits, to understand what's really happening, it's first important to understand two things: what's called outstanding shares and market capitalization. So an outstanding share is really just the total number of stocks that are issued to the investors or public. So if you buy stock in a company, you own one of the outstanding shares. These are essentially, a stock is money received from the public to fund the company. The company says, here, you can have ownership in my company, and as a result, I will give you either a dividend or just ownership that you can buy and sell. Right? They're just it's to get money to help fund growth, or whatever it is. Now, market capitalization is the total number of shares. So the company may own some of these shares, and so while we take a stock split, essentially all we're really going to be doing is changing the number of outstanding shares and changing the value of each share, ultimately with a net result of no change in market capitalization. So what I mean by that, so if we take our image here, we've got our stock. Let's say um, we have a total number of 1,000 shares outstanding. Okay, we say we're going to do a stock split. It's going to be a 2-to-1, so we're going to now have 2,000 shares, and that looks like more. But let's say these stocks were at $10 a share. Now we do a stock split and we have $5 per share. So if I'm an owner and I own I own 10 shares at $10 a share, my value is $100. If they double and say, instead of 10 shares, we're going to split it and you're going to now have 20 shares at now $5 per share, hopefully we can see nothing has changed in the value of my stock. But perception is key. We could go the other way and do the same thing, but for now, let's talk about perception of what this means. If I'm an investor, suddenly I feel like there's a bargain price on my stocks. I could buy more of them if I wanted to. Um, it lowers the value of what an individual stock costs, but doesn't change the value of the overall portfolio that I currently have as one of the owners of these outstanding shares that have been sold to the public. And so it's important for us to know how that works on the other end as well. We talk about the other way. If we go the other direction and say I have a company here and they have 1,000 shares at $10 per share, and they now say, you know what, we want to cut it back. We're going to say if you have 2 shares, it's now 1 share. It's not a stock split, it's a reverse stock split. And so now what's happened is, let's say I have 10 shares at $10 per share. I now see a reverse stock split, and now instead of having 10 shares, I have 5 shares. But the value of my shares has increased. So again, nothing's changed in the ultimate market cap, and really nothing's changed in the value of what I have. But we have seen a change in perception. Now we can look at this and say that my perception of this is that the stock is worth more. This happens a lot with penny stocks. So penny stocks values are usually $5 or less, usually less than $5 per share. To increase the perceived value, the corporation may increase the price per share, at the same time decreasing the number of shares. So what this does, instead of a 2-1 split, it's a 1-2 split. So now, if I hold a share, I would hold one share for every two previously held, and the price would go up, I would then say, well, look, the stock is doing better, their business is doing better. That's a good view in the economy, because again, their perception of a business hugely affects the actual value of the business. When stocks go on a fire sale and they're way cheap and they're just selling like hotcakes, of course, we don't use that phrase, but when that's happening, uh, we perceive that that company is not valued very high, that it's going to go out of business. This happens quite a bit to get business out there, right? To get their name out there and whatever else. But in actuality, um, it may not mean anything about the business. The business may be fine, but because public perception says it's not doing good, the value goes low, and people go and buy a bunch of these shares at a lower price. So let's do an example, something that we might see on the homework here. So let's say on December 4th, John Deere Corporation instituted a 2-for-1 stock split. Before the split, the market share price was $87.68 per share. And the corporation had 1.2 billion shares outstanding. What was the pre-split market cap for John Deere? So what's the pre-split market cap? So that's our question. So the market cap before the split is determined by multiplying the number of outstanding shares by the market price at that time. So we said 1.2 billion. Go ahead and write that out so we can see that times 87.68. Now we can try that in our calculator. I don't know that it's going to show it, so let's change the view. So we had 1 times 87.68. Huge number. We're looking at 105 billion, 216 million, and that's the pre-split market cap. That's the value, if you will, before the split. Again, all we're doing here is saying, well, how many shares are there, and what's the price per share? Now, if we were to say a split, and say now this is not 87.68, it's now 43.84. We'd be saying 43.84 per share, and that 1.2 billion would be 2.4 billion shares, right? And the value would hold as the $105 billion plus. Nothing has changed in that. Talk about one more thing, fractional shares, which occurs quite a bit, and it can be kind of confusing. So in all the previous examples that we talked about shares, and they were split into whole number amounts, which means it's if I had 2 shares, now I have 4. If I have 4 shares, now I have 2. But what about situations where the split isn't exactly clean? We often see this happen. We call it a fractional part of a share. In other words, there's less than 1 share remaining. When this happens, the corporation actually buys that fractional share at the current market price. They're not going to sell you half of a share of stock. However, you do see this stuff occur when you get like fractions of an index, a fund, or something like that. But when it comes to actual values of stock, they're not going to say you have 1/16 of a stock value split amongst 15 other people. They're going to pay you whatever the market price is for the share at whatever rate of a share it is. So if it was half a share, whatever. So let's say Steve owns 942 shares of a corporation. We'll call it, I don't know. We'll call it Graham Corporation. On January 3rd, a 5-for-4 split was announced. So now they're going to give, for every 4 shares, you now have 5, right? So if it was selling at 56 a share, and we have 942 shares, they're going 5-4. So post-split versus pre-split. So we're saying it used to be 4 shares, now it's 5. So post is on top, pre is in the denominator. If we said we're doing a reverse stock split of 4-5, then it would be, the roles would be flipped, right? So 942 times 5/4 gives us 1,177.5. That would be the total number of shares. For price, it goes the other way. As we add more shares, we're reducing price. So we take the inverse, or the reciprocal, of that against the price, which is 56 per share. And that gives us 44.80 as the value, the new value of the price. Now again, fractional shares aren't traded, so they're going to give us this extra fractional share. This is shares. This is price per share now that they're selling. So we've gone down from 56 to 44.80. They're going to give us half of one of these shares, or they're going to pay us out $22.40. And they're going to give us the 1,177 shares. So this is going to be a payment at whatever the market price is, which we just determined is this. So again, as a review, let's go ahead and do that again just to make sure we have it. Post over pre for the number of shares times the number of shares, and pre over post times the share price. Because again, if we are doing a stock split, the number of shares is going to increase by an amount, the value of shares is going to decrease. For doing a reverse stock split, the number of shares is going to decrease by a certain amount, and the value per share is going to increase because the market capitalization does not change. How much it's worth does not change. And then from there we just say, well, if we have a fractional share, right, so anything less than 1, so in our example we had 0.5, we multiply that by now what the new share price, the new price is after the split. And that equals a payment that's made to us. And then we have onto that new number of shares, whatever it is. If it's a split, then we're having more. If it's a reverse split, then we have less. And that's really this lesson. We talk about stock splits. Again, nothing is changing for the market cap. The amount of money versus how many stocks there are does not change. It's perception. Ultimately, and potentially a payment for that fractional share, just because they're not going to give us a fractional share. But that's it. That is what we do as stock splits. That's the exoticness. That's a word. That's the definition of a stock split. Nothing changes by what you own, but your perception or how many stocks you can now buy. Because let's say you do a stock split and investors go and buy a bunch, and then your company does a stock reversal. Their individual shares aren't going to change, but they bought more shares in, and so they have this bargain opportunity. That's what we're looking at here. If you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.